This is Only the Strong Survive, a podcast powered by Con Media, where we dive deep into the world of business, leadership, and innovation. I'm your host, Dan Con, and I'm honored to have you join us today. So, let's get ready to learn some survival skills together. Hey everybody, it's Dan Con with Only the Strong Survive, powered by Con Media and Tread Agency. Hope you are having a great day, and thank you for joining us. Before we dive into our next episode, which is a really interesting and informative one, I thought I would give you some updates. So a few things. First of all, as many of you probably know, I wrote a book and it came out in mid-January. It is called The New Rules of the Road: How to Navigate the Rapidly Changing Marketing Landscape. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It's a quick read. It's sort of half looking at how we got to where we are today in terms of the changing modalities for marketing and PR, and then also forward looking in terms of what I think is coming in the future. And then most importantly, it has an action plan in each chapter that will help you build a marketing and PR plan for your business, your startup, your side hustle, whatever it is, using some of these tactics we talk about in terms of the way PR, media, and marketing have changed as we kind of move into a decentralized media landscape and away from kind of traditional linear television and magazines towards more of a creator-based media economy. The New Rules of the Road. Thank you again. It's number one in several categories. It's doing quite well. So I want to say thank you. Beyond learning about our two agencies, Con Media, which is conmedia.com, and Tread Agency, which is at treadagency.com. If you want to read more about the book, about me as an author, I've got some blogs and some other thoughts. You can also check out my personal author site, which is dancon.com. And then as an extension of that, we've got some other cool stuff to talk about. I am going to be doing some live seminars based on the lessons from the book coming up this year in 2025. So the first one that is coming up will be in May at the NSSF Leadership and Marketing Summit. So that the NSSF is the National Shooting Sports Foundation. They're the main kind of trade association for the firearms industry. They produce the SHOT Show in Vegas. The SHOT Show I've talked about before. We've done an episode from there. It's great. And then the summit that they do is really for leaders, marketers, people, high-level sales positions. And this year, that's going to be on May 14th and 15th in Florida, in Clearwater Beach. And I'll be one of the featured speakers there talking about the subjects in this book. And then if you work in automotive, I'll be doing a very similar talk, but instead of geared towards two-way, it'll be geared towards automotive at the SEMA show this November. We don't have the date of my seminar yet. It'll be probably on Tuesday of the SEMA show. But look for that on the calendar as you register. I will be doing a seminar also based on the New Rules of the Road. So in both cases, if you work in either industry, I would love for you to come. We're going to give away copies of the book. We're going to give away some workshops. We're going to do a lot of knowledge building, and I'm really looking forward to talking to everybody. Moving into this episode, we're going to be talking about media, storytelling, the future of print versus online, and the outdoors industry in general with Natalie and John Radzwilla, the team behind Hook Barrel Magazine. They've built a publication that blends fishing, hunting, adventure, and luxury lifestyle elements with a fresh take on outdoors. And we met for the first time at SHOT Show not too long ago, and I was really kind of blown away by what they're doing and was very pleased that they agreed to join us on the show. So John, Natalie, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So I guess just to kick things off, it's no secret that on this show, we've spent a lot of time over the last 30 or so episodes talking about media, where we've come, where we're going, the future of things like print versus online and social and authentic storytelling. And you guys have done something kind of unusual. You've launched a new print lifestyle publication in a specialty market, which is not as common as it used to be. So give us the backstory. Who are you? Where'd you come from? And why'd you decide to launch a magazine?
Both Natalie and I have business backgrounds. And interestingly enough, both of them actually kind of stem from the fashion world. And a little bit of this concept came from that fashion world prior life that both of us had. I was sitting there at a bar in about 2017 or 2018. I love the hunting, fishing, shooting space. And I realized that there wasn't a lifestyle and entertainment magazine in the vein of, say, like a GQ or a Maxim or any of the Condé Nast kind of publications for outdoorsmen. As the whiskey flowed, I kind of started, sketching out what this would look like. And then I strolled over to Barnes and Nobles, and there wasn't what I was looking for. And so I had realized that I was onto a niche. I had a CEO prior to working for myself that once told me that you find a niche and you find a need within that niche, and then you just dominate that space. That's what he did. And that always kind of stuck with me. That was the one thing I took from that job. And that's what we did. We found a need for a lifestyle and entertainment magazine for the outdoorsman. And it all stemmed from a bar napkin. And so I came home and almost immediately Natalie jumped on board from the operations side into the sales side. And we both decided to tackle this absolutely monumental task ahead of us. I don't know if we ever realized how monumental it was and actually how far it would take us. But yeah, that's pretty much how it all started. Just we saw a need and we decided that we were just going to dominate that space.
So you said this thing kind of started at a bar drinking whiskey in 2018. When did you kind of come up with the first sort of concept? When did actually pen hit paper and you say, okay, we're going to start this, we're doing it?
What's crazy is we owned a small boutique PR marketing firm here in Dallas, and we had several outdoor clients, big outdoor clients. They all had the same need. They all said, we really want to hit that 35 to 55-year-old demographic, the younger generation, the next generation that has the money. But how do we do it? Back in early 2018, sure, social media was around, but it wasn't what it is today, especially in terms of the ad and the sponsored posts and all those sorts of things, or the influencer world. It just didn't quite hit yet. And so John and I would come home every day and say, where are we going to place these clients? What are we going to do? Obviously, John mentioned how we found this niche, we found this space that wasn't being fulfilled when he said, you know what, we can't find the media, let's become the media. I mean, it literally was, okay, well, let's get to work now. And we called anybody and everybody that we knew that had anything to do with the publishing industry. We were so green. We knew nothing about having a magazine, nothing about the operational ends of what it entailed, nothing. I mean, we didn't even have a Rolodex of writers. We had some photographers from our agency, but that was about it. If you know us, we work really fast. We're decision makers. If we make a decision, we're going to act fast. We're not going to hem and haw and have meetings about it. And so we just got to work and we started formulating the concept, built the plan. John is the visionary behind Hook and Barrel. He just had the foresight to think, okay, what would be popular within this demographic and how could we structure it? We just went from there. It's been a wild ride.
Yeah, I think the foresight is something that we should definitely key in on too. It's like, if you're going to be in business, any business that you're in, you should be looking at least 2 to 3 years down the road. And that's kind of what I saw in 2018. As we looked at what the space was doing, I saw that the wars were coming to an end and just about every Navy SEAL that was going to write a book wrote a book. At that point, I was like, well, what's the next evolution? Like, where is this industry going to go? Because we cannot be door kickers and war fighters in every aspect of it. Because if you looked at the marketing back then, it was a lot of like very aggressive kind of marketing. And I knew eventually that would have to burn off. And as the wars were coming to an end, I realized that there was going to be a need within the next 2 to 3 years for something new. And that new was the lifestyle. Right as that lifestyle part of it really kind of took hold, that's right when COVID happened. That's when a lot of people started really embracing the lifestyle because it's all that was out there. And here we were perfectly positioned at that moment. And by the grace of God, at that time, we were primarily in Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's at that moment. And those stores were deemed as essential stores. 2 weeks prior, we were freaking out that we didn't know what was going to happen. Then they got deemed essential. And then within that 2 to 3 weeks, we're like, oh shit, now we got to print more magazines. Like, what are we going to do? Because they were flying off the shelves. So where it was a curse for a lot of people, for us, that time frame was a blessing.
You had a lifestyle publication, which it's not a secret at this point. We've talked about this in past episodes, that COVID was bad for a lot of things, but it was very good for certain industries, especially kind of recreation industries. So if you're pushing a lifestyle publication about that type of, subject matter in a store that is allowed to stay open during that time, that's an opportune moment. So let's talk about distribution. So for those who've not seen Hook and Barrel, you kind of described it as like the GQ of the hunt fish kind of world. Explain your distribution model, because it is sort of unusual.
Yeah. So when we first got into the marketplace, I looked at the distribution model of how traditional magazines work. And it was the most half-ass backwards, if I could be frank, process. You print, let's say, for 100,000 copies for easy math. You print that many. You distribute them out throughout Barnes & Nobles and all the Hudson Newses and all the places you could pick up a magazine, Kroger's or Albertsons or whatever your local grocery chain is, etc. Then you hope to have a 20% sell through. Then you agree to buy back all the other ones at some price, and then you have to pay to do something with all of that waste. And I looked at it and I'm like, no wonder these magazines aren't working. What a stupid way of doing this.
They call it sell-through rate. It is really stupid. The whole thing makes no sense.
So I'm like, how do we do this otherwise? And so the other one is a controlled circulation where you just like put them all over the place. Like think about your local coffee shop. I guarantee your local town probably has some local magazine that's like the community news or whatever it happens to be. In my opinion, that's called littering. You're just throwing paper all around the city hoping that somebody picks it up. And so I thought to myself, what if we created a calculated, controlled circulation where we put these things where we know outdoorsmen, where shooters, where hunters, where anglers are going to be? What does that look like? And as your listeners will learn about me, there is nothing that I don't do that's not to the max. I'm not going to take a small chain. I'm not going to do that at this particular juncture. And so I set my sights on Bass Pro Shops, Cabela's, the biggest retailers in America. And I spent 6 months getting this agreement done with them for a free distribution model at the exits of all of their stores in Texas. And the agreement was we had to have stock on that shelf for the 2-month life cycle as it was, and that it would never go empty until the end of the issue. We were so green. We're like, how many do we print? And Natalie looked at the bank account and that kind of determined how much we printed. And we could afford at that time to print 10,000. Well, in 2 weeks, they were gone. Okay, 1, we're onto something. 2, we may be in trouble. So we made a few phone calls, did a lot of apologizing.
How many of those stores are in Texas? Like how many distribution points?
I think they've added Spring, Texas, and they added Grand Prairie. So that would be 16 out. And Tyler says 17. Tyler's coming. So, but at that time it was 14. And they were gone. I think it was our first cover was Martin Truex Jr. And he had just won, I forget which big race it was at that time, but he was on the cover. It was the July-August issue. He drove the Bass Pro Car Shop. I mean, it was Charlie Bar the doors. So then we learned really quick how many we needed to print for Texas. And then once we got Texas, we got a nudge from Bass Pro and they said, hey, what would you think about taking on Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Arkansas? Absolutely. Since the beginning, we positioned the magazine to be a national magazine. We never would take regional ads. We never would take fractional ads because I knew the moment that you did that, and that actually, this was very much a Natalie thing too, we would become a regional pub and that hole would be forever harder to get out. What we did is we kind of like, I want to say faked it till we made it. We carried ourselves the way that we wanted to be perceived with our sights on always being national. And so that's the way we proceeded. And we looked at what all the national magazines did. We only took national advertising. We didn't take mom and pop feed stores. We only took big, bold, full page ads. That strategy nearly bled our bank account completely dry to the point where we had trouble making a mortgage a few months. But we knew that if we stayed the course, either we'd have to figure things out in a hurry about bankruptcy and foreclosure, or we were going to catch that wave. And thankfully, again, by the grace of God, we caught that wave.
Very good. I mean, I think anyone who's been through the startup process and is an entrepreneur knows what that feeling is like. And sometimes it's in the beginning. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes people can be 5 or 10 years in and have, some kind of a shift and have to deal with that. So I think a lot about that I think it was the Rocky Balboa movie, the later one, where he talks about how like winning isn't about how hard you can hit. It's how hard you can get hit and keep going.
Yeah.
So I respect that you guys did that. So I guess at some point, you've got to start walking around, whether you're talking to family members, your parents, people in business, and you say, hey, we're doing this thing. We're starting a new business and it's going to be a print publication. It's going to be distributed at retail outlets, like Bass Pro and Cabela's. Obviously, you're buying paper, you're paying publishers. I mean, there's a lot of overhead involved in producing a physical magazine versus a website. At some point, did you have to bring in outside money? Did you have to bring in investors, or was it completely bootstrapped and self-funded yourselves?
We completely bootstrapped it. It was completely self-funded. The crazy thing is in the beginning, everybody thought that we were crazy. At the time, we were 33 years old, both of us. And what 33-year-olds back in 2018 were deciding to start this outdoor lifestyle print magazine. And that was going to be our tangible product. That was what we were coming out of the gates with. It didn't start from a website. It didn't start from a blog. It didn't start from an Instagram or Facebook page. Like, we came out of the gates with a print publication, not knowing what we were doing. And in the beginning, we employed and contracted a publishing house. There's a big story there, but you talk about rocky beginnings or rocky times as an entrepreneur. I mean, we definitely had those. I just started getting really nitty gritty about the numbers and who we were paying and what we were paying for. And it turns out that we just caught them basically stealing from us. We'll call it what it is. And so it left us in a position of some nights not even being able to afford ramen noodles, not knowing if the roof is going to stay over our head. It left us in a really, really sticky position. Once we found that out, obviously we made changes and we let them go, and we had to change on a dime and bring in a new team. We needed an editorial director. We needed a little bit of help, but like the two of us did the job of probably what any other masthead on any other magazine shows about 25 to 30 people. It was just the two of us doing, which is just so wild. And story upon story upon story, I could probably tell. We looked at each other and we just said, look, everybody told us in the beginning, a lot of people were very discouraging, saying, you're crazy. You'll never see a dime. You'll be lucky if you see a dime in the first 10 years. I just looked at John and I said, that's not going to be our story. We did pretty well with our marketing company. Why did I want to give up that business and that lifestyle that we were building for ourselves in our young 30s for something that could potentially kick us on our ass for the next 10 years? It just wasn't of interest to me. We both thought and knew and just were confident enough that, hey, if anybody can do this, it's going to be the two of us. So let's just give it our all and we're going to go after it. We're going to see where it lands us. During the time where we literally had like not even a cent in the bank for food, we just looked at each other. This is like right when we made this change, and it was such a pivotal time. That very next issue was kind of our make or break. And this was in... What was that?
2019.
2019. So about a year in, and we publish every other month. So it was like our 6th issue or 7th issue. This was our make or break issue. We had changed the team. We figured out what was happening with the people that we were contracting. And that next issue, we actually made money. You have to have a level of business savvy when you're an entrepreneur and you go after something like this. I mean, I think that that's something that him and I both possess, even at that younger age. And we just started making all these changes necessary. And we didn't want to bring in investors. We didn't want to bring in any outside help. We just were really stood firm in that because we saw other magazines that did the same thing, and then they were rolled up or washed up or closed doors. Again, we wanted a different story. So we worked really hard to make sure that our story didn't end up like anybody else's.
Well, and I think your timing is really interesting. So in January of 2020, Tread obviously focuses more on the outdoor market, and Con focuses more on luxury and automotive. And an event that we've been attending for like 20 years on the automotive side is this media trade conference that happens every January. I'll never forget for the rest of my life the one we went to in January of 2020. In December of 2019, Source Interlink, which at the time was the single biggest enthusiast magazine publishing company in the country, and they owned all the newsstands. It was a vertically integrated deal. So they owned, and we had an early episode of this show, we had Matt Boyce on, who used to run that thing. And I think they owned Peterson's at the time. They owned a bunch of fun fishing and hunting stuff. They owned all the car magazines on the newsstand. They had, like 30 magazines. In December of 2019, they killed off like 90% of their titles. They laid off like 90% of their employees. It was a bloodbath. It was like a week before Christmas too, which is brutal. And then just a few weeks later in January, we have this media trade conference, and we got there and it was like Night of the Living Dead. It was so weird because most of the publications were gone. Now, these are all subscription-based. They all had the model you were just talking about. I worked there 25 years ago. The sell-through rate would be like 8%, 9%. The whole model was insane. So we get to this media trade conference, and first of all, half the people that are usually there aren't there. And then of the ones that were there, half of them were unemployed. And there are these magazine editors that were going around kind of this like long face. Obviously, I felt terrible for these people going like, I'm just here networking. I don't have a job anymore. And I remember just a handful of people who even then were going like, what is the future of the magazine business even going to look like? Will there be magazines anymore? Because that model was so broken, they couldn't conceptualize, like to them, it was binary. It was either like the newsstand thing or the internet. There's nothing in between. Right in the middle of all that, you guys have kind of created this third thing that they couldn't really conceptualize. And so I think that's really interesting. So obviously the whole world was in kind of a crazy place for a couple of years around that time. And then COVID happened, and that helped the outdoor industry a lot. When you think back on the inception of Hook and Barrel to today, how does sort of the traditional media play with the internet, with social, with blogs? How has the landscape shifted just in the time you've been running your your business.
The landscape has changed dramatically. And if they haven't realized that, they deserve not to have jobs. They should have forecasted that a long time ago. The internet was coming. And it's amazing what happens when people ignore the train. They want to pretend it's not coming. That's how you get rolled over. The magazine itself is the one tangible thing we have because we didn't want to become a blog or a vlog or whatever. We want to have a tangible product. But at the end of the day, I always knew what the evolution was going to be. It's going to be a multifaceted media company. And this distribution model, hoping to sell 8-10% is just, it's a losing model. If you're a listener, think about those offers you used to get from the magazines. 99 cents for an entire year.
Right.
They weren't doing that because they were giving you a deal. That was called a loss leader. They would lose the money to gain the circulation in order to match the numbers that they were probably faking anyway, then to take that to the advertiser and say, hey, now you need to buy an ad based upon this.
Or the cute fifth grader or fourth grader who's going door to door for their school selling magazine subscriptions, or the dentist's office that they count as pass along and they say, oh, this one goes to a doctor's office, so it's going to count as 50 people instead of one, like all that stuff.
It's all smoke and mirrors. And there's still people within our space that do it. There's new magazines that have come on that literally told us, hey, it's the internet. We just make things up. It's unbelievable what happens in this space still. That's not how we operate. And I realized that yeah, we're giving away a dollar bill every time we give one of these away, but I'd rather give away to create the distribution. When we say we have 85,000 in print, we have 85,000 in print. And that number, every one of those is a dollar out of my kid's mouth. So, or our kid's mouth. And so for me, it's like these numbers need to be absolutely dialed. And Natalie does an unbelievably good job at that. If it's not moving in a store, we pull it, we move it to another store. Now we're in over 40 states, over 140 stores. That model works. But Dan, let me ask you this. Do you pay for content?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, most people probably...
I'm weird, and I know that. So yeah, most people don't.
Well,
but yeah, I do.
I was hoping you'd say no, but
Right.
won't pay for content. They log on to a website and they read it. And as soon as they hit a paywall or a wall that says, hey, give me your email address, most of the time they bounce. And so if you look at it, if you didn't see this coming on the internet, right? Since what? The early 90s, you could log on to a website and read anything that you wanted to read. And it's out there for free. And then social media came around and that was free. And then YouTube came around and that was free. And then if you look at Yahoo News and MSN.com and all the things that were the predecessors, that content was all free. And that's something that I started seeing. I'm like, no one's paying for content anymore. So how do I create a premium luxury content and deliver it for free? And no, we're not going to create, a cheapo magazine that feels like it should be toilet paper. If you feel our covers, we still invest in our paper. We still want it to be premium.
Yeah, I've got a copy right here. Blake Shelton. Looks pretty good. Yeah. It's nice.
And we invest in that. And so that was the first iteration of it is first off creating a free premium luxury product that you could pick up easily at any store with a very controlled circulation, with a very intelligent woman behind the wheel, making sure those details were not missed. Every magazine was not left behind. Next was the next evolution, which was the digital side, and taking what we have in our magazine and rolling it over to the digital. Then came the growth of our own digital content. And that became huge. Then the genius behind the GQ side, right? Like a dead deer on the cover of a hunting magazine doesn't talk on the internet, right? Blake Shelton does. Jason Aldean does. Jocko does. And so when they say, hey, check out my cover, they drive people to the website. And then those people start clicking on more things. And we could get into the artificial intelligence side of things that we're developing and we have developed and are continuing to. I mean, it's just the way you deliver this content. It's mind-boggling that people are either foolish or ignorant enough not to realize that things are changing. I mean, we still have people in our industry talking about search engine optimization and becoming the first on Google. Well, now when you use Google, you read the Gemini snippet.
We had a former client tell us last week, nice guys, I like them a lot. They don't seem to have their technical, what together, but they told us last week, literally like 4 days ago, we're shifting our whole marketing budget around. We're putting everything into SEO. I said, hey, look, respectfully, like do whatever you want. And I have no skin in this game because that's not really what we do anymore. But that's not a great bet. Like AI has completely imploded the entire SEO marketplace. Like, why would you do any of that?
Does you have my MySpace page?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because in 2001, I was working for Peterson Publishing at the time. I remember because I was one of the younger guys in a room where there was some meeting and they were talking about the web, and they didn't have websites for most of the magazine titles at the time. And I remember a bunch of old guys came into the room and unveiled their strategy to us. And the strategy was, we don't want to compete with these websites. So what we're going to do, and we don't want to cannibalize our own audience. So we're going to, and it takes 90 days from the time you put together a, EdCal plan to executing a magazine in 120 before it hits the newsstand. So we're going to have a 120-day lag on all content. And that way, from the moment it gets written to the moment it goes online, we're going to wait 120 days. And that way, we're not competing with our own magazine.
That shows the relevancy of the content, that it wouldn't go stale within 3 months.
Well, and that's my point is what they didn't understand is the consumer doesn't give a shit. The consumer is like, if I can read something today that happened today, that sounds great. I'm not going to wait 120 days. I don't care about something that happened 4 months ago. A lot of those guys that were in that room are still in this business, and they all lost their jobs, and they're all still trying to make that model work. And that was 24 years ago.
Look, the print reader and the digital reader oftentimes overlap, but also very different people.
Well, and what I'm seeing is, and this has been a real turnaround for me personally, because you asked, do I pay for content? And I do in a couple different ways, and I'll explain my answer. First of all, I think stuff like Substack is great, where if there's a reader, because I was, even as a kid, I knew bylines when that was weird. Like most 15-year-olds don't know the byline of some magazine writer, but there was subject matter, whatever, outdoor stuff or car stuff that I was passionate about. I want to know who wrote the article. I want to know if they're really if they know their stuff or if they don't. And in today's world, if a writer wants to go off on their own and they're going to continue to produce the content that I like, but they can't maybe do it at a traditional newspaper or magazine or whatever, I'm happy to pay that guy $10 a month to read his stuff. And if that way he can pay his bills and keep doing this for a living and not have to go be a realtor or something, right on. I think that's great. So to me, the whole decentralized independent media thing, to an extent, I'm willing to pay for it. But the other thing I've figured out, and something I kind of like about your magazine too, is as someone who spends my entire day in front of a screen, all day, every day, when my kids are finally in bed and I'm laying with my wife trying to unwind, I don't want to be in front of a screen. So for me, if I can go on your website and read deep dive content or more breaking content online, at the end of the day, I don't want to do that on my phone. I want to hold something tangible that allows me to actually relax and not have blue light pummeling my brain. I think people are starting to come around on that. So I do think having sort of a option 1, option 2 for people with your content, where you're putting it on the internet, you're doing rich content, you're putting stuff in video, you're producing, we'll talk about that in a minute, video content, but you also still have a more traditional magazine that people can read if they're sitting on the porch or they're out on the lake on their boat or whatever, and they don't want to have a screen. There's I think, purpose to that.
I think it's great that you support the independent media and the folks that are putting a lot of effort into their
I always wonder who paid for that.
emails. I pay for some. I mean, your own wife pays for some. But I think people pay for the value, right? So if it's a value to you, you're going to pay for it. I think the cool thing about Hook and Barrel is, while we started, primary distribution method is direct store relationships around the country that we have, and we have an agreement to that we're being distributed in their store. If you live near one of those, great, you can swing by and pick up that mag for free. But we have subscribers coast to coast too. Paid subscribers coast to coast. So, and that's what's really exciting, is what we have found over the years is people who didn't necessarily live near a store that we were offered in, they still wanted the content. It showed us, wow, we are actually putting out a lot of valuable content. The visuals are best of the best. I mean, we have very high standards for anything that goes into the pages of our magazine. So let's sell those subscriptions. And that's done very well for us. So it's encouraging to hear people like you, and you're not the first. We hear it all the time. It's like, our days are spent in front of a screen. What are you doing to unwind your eyes?
I have to read before bed. If I'm not like on a screen, if I'm not reading paper, I'm up all night. So I'm curious, one thing about the old magazine model, there was sort of a juggernaut element to it, where, like you mentioned, Condé Nast earlier, or Hearst, or the old version of Peterson when it still existed. There was enough sort of velocity in these big publishing groups that if they decide they want to launch a new title or go after a new subset, they can do that, because they have all this real estate and they have all this juice with the distribution mechanism of newsstands and supermarket chains and Walmarts. And, they say, okay, we're going to do a new publication that's focused on whatever. They can just push that through and say, if you really want, GQ and Men's Journal, you have to take this other one too. And then they could kind of force it onto the newsstand, and that drives circulation. Now that things have become completely decentralized, how do you build a brand? How do you say, I want people to know what Hook and Barrel is, who we are, what we stand for. And, I assume the goal is when someone looks at the cover, they're going to automatically, whether they've heard of you or not, they're going to say, hey, that's something that's of interest to me. So how do you build a brand where you don't have this sort of juggernaut behind you, sort of forcing distribution to happen?
I guess the simple question or simple answer is like we did, but I don't exactly know if that's a very simple answer. I mean,
It's a slow grow.
it's a slow grow. You're right about the covers. The covers speak for themselves. I don't need somebody to be convinced to pick up Deer Hunting 2 with a dead deer on the cover, or a bass fishing magazine with just another fish, right? I find household faces that are very easily recognizable, or names that are very easily recognizable that we put in big print across the front of the magazine that stops somebody and picks it up. And a lot of times these people think when they're picking up this magazine that they're stealing. And we had to put free on the magazine stand so that people understood this premium product was actually gratis to them. It's hard to build a brand right now, especially like we did. I think we found a unique way of doing it. It takes a tremendous amount of risk tolerance to go and do this. I mean, I think if you want to create a brand in a decentralized arena, you have to be really brave and you have to be willing to fail. Chances are you're probably going to. And you have to be okay with that. And then the other side of it is you have to be relentless. Natalie and I are 24/7. I mean, we fall asleep talking about it. We wake up talking about it. And as a couple, we struggle a lot of times or disconnect from it. We have to remind each other like, hey, put down the phone. This is man and wife time. We need this time. I mean, it's funny, but not funny. And we just talked about it in a video shoot yesterday. 3 hours after she gave birth, Jack hadn't even been out of the incubator yet. And I know like every Karen is going nuts right now that's like mom oriented. She was on her first and second conference call before our child was brought to us. I mean, that's how it was. And that's it still is. I mean, she just had a really bad spinal surgery, but at the end of the day, this was 2 years ago, 10 days after surgery, again, funny, not funny, she had to pick up the phone and get back to work because this is our business and you have to be relentless. And for me, it's nonstop as well. I mean, she's made a lot more sacrifices, unfortunately, with the hand that she was dealt with that surgery and giving birth. Like, I mean, mothers do amazing things, but just even from my standpoint too, like I don't go out with the guys. I don't have friends really. I mean, I have a few close friends and I have a lot of acquaintances. We've become social hermits in a way. We literally work and grind. I actually just put out a big piece on burnout. I think after 7 years of this, a couple months ago, we both were on the kitchen floor, like holding each other. We're like, oh, okay. My buddy's like, so you finally he's texting me. He's like, you finally understand about what burnout is. I said, yeah, I'm burnt out, but I put on my headlamp and kept going.
Yeah, no, that's a real thing. In all entrepreneurship, in any business that you're bootstrapping by yourself, this show is called Only the Strong Survive for a reason.
I think the most important thing that entrepreneurs could take away, even if the thing that you're building fails, in the end, it's not that thing that you were building yourself. And at some point you get to this stage where it's like, yeah, this failed, but you know what? Screw it. Let's do this new thing because I know I could handle it. I found that switch where I've endured all this and we'll just do something new, right? Like eventually you get so battle hardened. And I think that's another thing that sets us apart. Like when we were being stolen from and these people said, no, don't do it. And I actually had a guy say, hey, if you're going to be a burr under my saddle, I'll be a burr under yours. I'm like, dude, I'm not going to be a burr. I'm going to be a freaking burr tree, whatever that looks like. And I will put you out of business. It gets me fired up, but you can't take any of that naysaying. You can't have any of that affect you. You have to be so battle hardened that no matter what comes at you, that you're like, all right, yeah, that hurt, but it's going to hurt a lot more when I get back up. That's kind of how we roll. And I think that goes back to answering your question about how do you build a brand? You have to find a unique niche. Like my old CEO said, dominate that space, battle harden yourself, and then just be absolutely relentless and ruthless when it comes to growing it until that seed roots. And at that point, then you start nurturing it. Until that thing actually sprouts, you just have to buckle down and just be ready for it.
Yeah, well said. Let's talk about kind of where things are going. You're producing the magazine. You've got a great site. Talk about rich content and video and all that, because I know you guys have been working really hard on that as well.
Definitely, Dan. Let's not forget to talk about the artificial intelligence side of things too, but I'll address that first question. I think that's, again, we're doing some independent films and we're doing some YouTube stuff. And we actually just put out a great film with Chase Rice. We're about to launch a new series called Safe Space. It's kind of like MTV Cribs, where instead of like checking out where the magic happens, we actually go and invade their gun safes and we look at all the celebs' favorite things. The Chase was video documentary, short indie film where we went out with a country music singer, Chase Rice, and then we learned about his music and time on tour. And then we went and shot at Elk, but we had all this campfire time and singing and brought the whole lifestyle was all into it. But again, I think that's a little bit of chasing business, right? Like we needed to say, hey, we could do this just as we have done our content in our magazine. We're going to put our lifestyle spin on it. We're going to put our hook and barrel spin on it. We're going to do the best possible product we can. But I think a lot of people are trying to get into the YouTube space and all these different spaces. And I would encourage anybody to either find their new spin on what they're going to do or look down the line and go, what's the next YouTube? What's the next new social media platform? I remember when Instagram first came out, people were trying to get me onto this Instagram platform. And I wish I would have back then because I would have had 1 million followers by now. I've got like 1,800, it's just like TikTok. Look at all the people that got on that early. It's just having that foresight to go, what's next? Imagine if you got on TikTok on day one. The algorithm would have loved you and you would have been filthy freaking rich putting up videos of you dancing. But again, it's those people that took that risk and put themselves out there.
And just to piggyback on that, I just heard the other day on a podcast that I listened to, it's called My First Million. So shout out to those guys because they do one hell of a job. But Sean was talking about if you think it's crazy, that you need to lean in. So when everybody was like, oh, TikTok's for the young generation, like it's so crazy. Well, you need to lean in. Or Instagram before that, you need to lean in. Or YouTube, same thing. Or a print magazine. Okay, well, we found that niche. Like we leaned in on that one. So I guess we leaned in on one of them, but it's just exciting to see the brand continue to evolve. And everything that we do has just been scaled. We just have to continue to scale. Where the magazine started off, we're advertiser driven. And so scaling to the digital platform. I mean, we've created our own programmatic AI within our site, serving you content that is specific to what you are clicking on and what you are interested in. And our site is recognizing that. So if you go to hookandbarrel.com and click on a few stories, whether that's in the shooting section or the entertainment section or the food section, and you go back to the homepage, it's called Guide, Guiid. So Guide is going to pop up at the top. Because you read articles in food, we thought you might like XYZ.
Oh, so it's like a recommendation engine. That's actually really interesting.
Yes. And so we're putting a lot of investment behind that and behind the tech side of things. And so now it's like so fun to see the beginning days of a print mag turn to digital platform, turn to video rich content. We are investing so heavily into the tech space. And now we're creating this overall media tech company, which is just really exciting.
Yeah, to kind of elaborate on Guide, 2 years ago, I was at a conference. The mic got passed to me. And I asked the editors panel, what are your thoughts on AI? What's artificial intelligence going to do to this landscape? Artificial intelligence is what the internet was back when you were dealing with it, right?
Yep.
And there's a lot of like grumbling in the room. I kept pressing the matter. And they came over and took the mic off of me and said, if we're going to talk about AI, we're going to have to move on. And one of the editors, I say famously, in my world, he's famous, made an incredibly ignorant statement. Artificial intelligence was invented by the liberals and we're not going to use it. And I just sat there and like,
okay.
You're an idiot. I was probably the first 10,000 people on ChatGPT trying to figure out this crazy world and how I could actually use it. And I think a lot of people in this space fear that people are going to create content exclusively using this. And I had the foresight to go, look, this is nothing about like how to write a review on a gun. It's only going to go out and scrape internet and find the reviews are already on a gun and probably have some hallucinations in it. What is artificial intelligence doing when it comes to serving content, organizing, making things like, what are the evolutions of this thing going to be? Like right now I'm having a conversation with a computer. There's the whole conversation part of what's going on. We developed Guide and this January, we dropped the first iteration that Natalie talked about. And there's a lot more than just a suggested article. What it's actually doing is monitoring what you're doing on the website, what you're clicking on, what you're reading, how far you're reading. It's monitoring what you're zooming in, what you're pinching on, what you're tapping on, all the things. And then there's about 100 and some different key points on the backside that eventually it monitors and then uses an algorithm then to go based upon all these things. These aren't just suggested articles because they're similar, but they're based upon Dan's unique fingerprint on the website. And these have the highest probability of interesting him. That's also then, put against a database that goes, hey, can we actually email these things? And the next iteration is actually going to be a chatbot that's trained on our website and all of our partners' content. And that's right now in the works. And then the hopes for 2026 is actually have face-to-face conversations with a 4K animated person that you would look like just you and I. And you're having a conversation with the guide, serving that content back to you based upon all of the information it knows about those products. So, hey, I'm going hunting. Great. What are you hunting? Elk. Cool. What are you going to shoot it with? I'm going on a rifle hunt. Okay, great. What rifle are you taking? Hey, let me give you a review on these particular rifles, man. Do you know that the 7mm backcountry from Federal is a really hot round right now? Here's a review on it. Check it out if you're going to go buy one. And then ultimately it's going to say, hey, here's my suggestion. Here's the best price on the internet right now to buy that rifle, to buy that ammo. And it's sending that content, but it's delivering great reviews. It's delivering unbiased kind of information. And then here's where you could go buy it. How do you argue with something like that? It's amazing that 2 years ago, they were worried that it was going to put writers out of jobs. Meantime, we're over here serving content with it 2 years later.
You bring up an interesting point. I don't disagree with anything you're saying. In fact, I agree with you. On the automotive side, and I've not seen this yet on Outdoors, thankfully, one of the top 5 major automotive kind of review and news sites on the internet basically laid off their entire team and replaced them with AI. I don't think the consumer knows that. We know that because we're obviously pretty close to things, but the content sucks because that is not the correct use for AI, right? Like as a delivery mechanism, as a walled garden for search, I think it's great. To replace the reviewers, there's no original content, especially when you're reviewing a new product, right? Nobody's reviewed it yet.
To clarify, I think, and maybe what sparked your comment there, is the AI is actually not going to give you a review. What it's going to do is it's going to go onto our website and pull a review link.
It's an aggregator.
Yes, from the actual author, the person that went out in the field and used that particular weapon or that.
And that's, I think, cool, is I think that is a great way to utilize that new technology, right? I mean, like, so one of our clients, and we actually talked about this when we met in person at SHOT Show, is the biggest off-road race in the world. And this race has, 15 years of history. They've got a constantly evolving rule book. Like in all motorsports, people like to push the limits. And when they do, they have to write new rules. And it's not really cheating if there's no rule against it. But then next year, there's be a new rule. And so they've had this constantly evolving thing. Well, what the founder of that race did, this was the first way I've seen somebody use ChatGPT in this way, is he got a GPT Enterprise account. He built a walled garden, and then he uploaded every rule book, every memo, and every document they've ever written into it, and then delivered that tool to all of the race teams and said, if you don't want to have to go through 15 years of paper, it's conversational. Just ask a question and it's going to tell you, because the only source material it's pulling from is our source material. So it'll tell you like, hey, is this legal? Yes, it is, or no, it's not. Here's why. And here's my sources. I'll cite them for you. As an accelerant, it's a really useful tool. I think where I get scared as a consumer is I still want to know that there is a person. If I'm reading a new rifle review or a new, like I know Hornady is one of your advertisers and I'm a fan of theirs, and Neil over there is a good guy. So like if I want to read a review of a new round, I want to make sure that there was an actual person who put a couple hundred of those downrange and could actually say, I put them on paper. Here's what it was like. Here's what we figured out. Here's my experience. And so I think where you guys are going to have an interesting opportunity is figuring out, okay, how do we continue to use subject matter experts who can tell a great story to create the content, and then use AI as the delivery mechanism? Well, I guess one of my questions was, how much time and money are you spending on prototyping stuff that may or may not work? Not all this stuff sticks, right?
Well, again, that goes back to being risk tolerant. We're dumping money into it. Now we're calculated in what we do. We're not foolish. What was it, about 4 years ago when NFTs were the big thing? I was talking to NFT makers trying to create an NFT for us to be a secret token that you could purchase that was transferable. But if you had it, you were the first to get this particular fishing lure. If you went to SIG, maybe you could get to the SIG Academy, or if you went to here, you get a discount or whatever. And you were actually able to show it. Now we all kind of see what happened with the NFT market. Nothing lost or nothing gained if nothing, or whatever that saying is. Like, we took a stab at it and it wasn't the right thing to do. But if it was, we were geniuses. And again, it's like looking at these things, like what is the next big thing? And it goes back to the guy 2 years ago that's like, hey, the liberals invented this, so we're not going to embrace it. Well, his publication's still in circulation. I wonder if he still has a job. I don't know. Probably. They're probably carrying on the same way. And then we're going to see him at SHOT Show 10 years from now, and they're going to be, man, these numbers are just continuing decline. I don't know why. What can we do? 12 years ago, we told you try this.
It's one thing to adopt something new and integrate it into what you're already doing. It's another thing to just kind of change everything and fully adopt at 100% and like change your whole business model. I think what we're really good at doing over the past couple of years is just adopting something new and integrating it into what we're doing. Actual writers were the original influencers. They are always going to be. I mean, we would never replace our content with something AI generated. And I think also, to the credit of the demographic that we reach, we have a very knowledgeable, very smart, educated reader coming onto our site. Anybody in our demographic, in our generation, they know when they're reading AI. And quite frankly, the content that's being produced that is AI only from some of these media sites, I mean, your organic search intent is plummeted. I mean, they're not ranking for anything. So it's like they're not even showing up. But then you've got this knowledgeable and educated consumer or reader coming in and they call BS on it. So they're Xing out of it. If you go to a media site and you click on an article and it does not have a person's like a actual byline, like you were talking about before, it's bias or just
bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's one of the challenges anyone in media has today. And it doesn't matter if it's a magazine or a podcast or a YouTube channel or anything, is there's so much noise, unless you get to a point where you're really established. If you're starting out, how do you prove that you actually know what you're talking about? Because you're right, there's so much bullshit out there right now.
Yeah, just use case scenarios, right? And
just keep showing up.
I mean, you gotta just be so consistent. And at this point, we have 7 years of content on our site, and really great content at that. If we could use AI as a tech tool to help aggregate like what's being served to you next, like it's reading within seconds of like what you're interested in, and it's serving you more of that content, why would we not incorporate that? Why would we not invest in that? It's just something that could make your user experience better on hookandbarrel.com.
One of the questions I also wanted to ask you, and for those that are listening, the business model, is interesting. And the traditional business model for magazines going back 75 years is historically either all advertising dollars or a blend of advertising dollars and circ dollars, right? And you mentioned that like you have had some circulation, people are now paying to subscribe to the magazine as well as picking it up for free at retail points of distribution. I'm assuming most of your revenue is still coming from some type of advertising. How do those conversations start? I guess, first of all, when you're going to major brands and saying we're starting a new print magazine that you probably have never heard of because we're brand new. And we also have this kind of novel distribution idea. Did they call you crazy? And then how do those conversations go now? Is it still print first? Is it rich content? Is it, hey, we want to be on your website and your magazine? Is it, hey, we want to work with you on one of these documentaries? How do those conversations go? What's that look like?
It's so funny when we think about, we were just talking about this yesterday on this build that we did, so it's fresh on my mind. But in the beginning, it was
nuts.
It was quite comical looking back at ourselves. But hey, I mean, such persistence from the two of us. We just knew we had something so great. I don't think either one of us knew the challenge that it would be bringing this lifestyle concept to the outdoor industry. They were so set in their ways of doing things the same old, same old. It was just an uphill battle, an uphill climb. And it seemed like we would never get to that summit. The first year, SHOT Show is just historically our biggest revenue show and where we are face to face with most of our brand partners. I remember that first year just basically walking into booths that we knew were bigger companies and just making our pitch and saying, hey, we're new at the market and we have this outdoor lifestyle concept. And how are you communicating with folks of our generation and younger demographic?
We cold called essentially Vista Outdoors. Like we walked in there, we're like, hey, we'd like to talk to somebody about advertising.
And it was nuts. We would just walk
How'd
in.
that go?
We just asked the marketing director and
Brian Kelvington at that time was extremely graceful. We walked in there. He sat down. He actually did take a meeting with us. He probably had like a coffee break or something. He took a meeting with us. He's like, this all sounds very interesting. Let us know how things go. We'll follow up. Maybe we'll talk next SHOT Show. He's very graceful about it. But we left there so defeated. Like we got the meeting and then we didn't. It's so funny about not counting your chickens before they're hatched. We walked out of SHOT, in our minds, about $500,000 in insertion orders. We're like, this is great. I think it was like 10 grand by the time. the time anybody ponied up anything. And most of it, I think, was like sympathy dollars. But you know what? Again, being smart and being able to adapt to things, like we're like, oh, okay, this is how the game is played. And there's this whole like RFP process and all of these things. And once you put out
agencies that, agencies on agencies that work for some of these brands and do their media buys. Literally, when we say we were so green, we were so green. So it's like comical to look back. Those conversations in the past when we first started and bringing this new like concept to this outdated space, it's a different ballgame. I've got companies reaching out to us every single day. Like, how can we get plugged in? How can we print advertise? There's companies I have to turn down because we're not necessarily aligned. And I'm not afraid to do that. We want to keep true to who we are as people, who we are as a brand, how we represent both of those things to our reader. I'm very particular about who we work with. I think our advertisers and our brand partners appreciate that. They know that they're going to be within a great company.
And the same thing with the distribution. We have a waiting list of people that want to distribute the magazine. But again, it's like, what stores are we going to go into? Is the sell through of the pool going to be worth it? Does that store merchandise? Does it look like our aesthetic? Does this all make sense? And so we're really particular with it. How much do you think over the years, into the six figures, we've left on the side of the road, essentially, just based upon advertisers that didn't live up to our standards? We've had ads come in that were like misogynistic, which were ridiculous. I'm like, why the hell would we alienate the female demographic with running this stuff? To even regional ones that were like, this is just going to put us back regional if we're not doing it.
I'm sure there's companies out there that are fine with those kinds of ads, but I mean, we're not like rolling in it where we have FU money. We just have standards. And I think just people working with us appreciate that. Now, obviously, back to your question is, do they want to be in across the board with us? The answer is yes. It's interesting because a lot of the companies that were really, really slow to adopt to this lifestyle concept, now every VP of marketing, CMO, director of marketing, whoever is running a company's media mix and their buys, everybody wants to be in the lifestyle space. I just sit back and I kind of smile, and it's like that relief point for me, knowing that we worked our asses off the last 6.5, 7 years to do a really great job. And now some of them are finally ready. And here we are. I mean, it's proven, it's successful. Readers love it. Without our readers, it wouldn't be anything. So let's face that. Like, everything we do is for that intent and for their intent. And so it's, we're going to be moving a lot of our money into the digital space 10 years behind, but that's okay. We've got great digital options too, and we're ready to, hear what it is that you feel like you need and what you want. And we're here constantly trying to elevate what that need is and the things that we can do. And again, like having a marketing and PR background, we're really invested with our brand partners. We give great ideas and we figure out different cool, unique concepts to run with. And we're always bringing ideas to the table. I think people like that from a business perspective. Again, the videos and the series that we're doing, it's crazy and such a compliment. Last year when we were rolling out our first 2 series, we didn't even have the concepts fully baked. We just said, hey, we're going to do this. This is our idea. People came on as the presenting and title sponsors without even knowing our full story arc within it. They just trusted the fact that we are doing things different and unique and it works. People are excited about it. They're excited to consume it. And so they wanted to be on board. And that's a really cool place to be in now 7 years later.
That's really interesting. As we kind of start to kind of wrap things up, one thing I did want to bring up and ask you about is, the outdoor industry is sort of interesting in that, John, you made a comment earlier about, somebody made a comment about like AI and the liberals invented it or whatever. And this industry is interesting in that it's rooted in kind of a couple of different mentalities, where on one hand, I think the hunt fish market does lean conservative. The 2A market definitely does. At the same time, conservation is really important. I think, if you want to have especially public land to hunt and fish on, that's a real issue. And, it's one that I think we have to figure out how to sort of navigate that. So as a thought leader, or as thought leaders, the two of you run this publication, you've got a big footprint, I think, in all these retail stores. And what is your take on outdoor media's responsibility in terms of talking about land use, land access, conservation, as well as kind of all the industries that you serve and you're talking to?
First off, I firmly believe the outdoors is not red and it's not blue, it's green, and not like in the Ralph Nader kind of green, right? For us, we'd really kind of try to stay out of the politics side of things. First off, everybody knows where we stand. We like guns, we like hunting. We like shooting. But as far as the conservation side, that kind of does lead you into politics. I mean, what I found most interesting is look at the current politics, right? A great example is Steven Rinella right now. Steven Rinella is openly speaking about Doge shutting down certain conservation things, most notably, I think yesterday, about the lamprey situation.
This is exactly why I was asking that question. So go on.
I'm like, this is a very interesting place that we're at. I think as outdoorsmen, we know where our values lie. We know that given the politics that we were presented with this year, we kind of had a clear choice on where we had to go. You also have to realize too, who we voted for and what that potential could have been. And we kind of signed up for basically the draining of the swamp, which includes a lot of this, wasteful spending in government agencies. And I hope that we're able to eventually realize that by cutting these different programs, we realize where the gaps are and we realize the value of certain ones. Like to some 19 and 24-year-olds at Doge, they probably have no idea what a lamprey is. What the hell is this? We're going to X this program. But as soon as they realize what it does to the ecosystems, they're going to start realizing that this is important. My hope and prayer of this is we realize what these particular items mean before it's too late. And I hope that we rehire where we need to. I mean, up into including like federal employees, losing their jobs, they're cleaning the toilets at Yosemite, right? Like these are clear things that we need to look at. We live in a very gray world. And I think that people that take these very like black and white stances forget to realize that there are going to be people caught in the middle of all this. And conservation is a very interesting world, right? Like I think that a Montana Democrat is a lot different than say a New York Democrat. And a Texas conservative is a lot different than a blue state conservative. I think we all kind of need to realize that. To your point, it's going to be very interesting to watch like navigating the waters in these conservation worlds. And, I oftentimes bring it back to the writers. You start dabbling in this kind of situation when you're messing with like organizations like OWAA. There's a lot of granola within that organization. But again, it's the way that you carry yourself, right? I think this is a problem in America in general, that we have lost the sense of decorum. I mean, everybody wants this rage bait kind of stuff on the internet and these polarizing statements, but you got to look at how you're delivering this content. This is my standpoint at Hook and Barrel. I want to take somebody from the left or the opposing way of thinking and bring them to the middle. Then I want to bring the people from the middle over to the 2A space, over to the hunt space, because the people in the middle are on the fence. They could go either way, right? Elections are won in the margins. So like we cannot alienate the independent vote. That's who wins most elections, right? And so a win for me is bringing somebody from the left to center, from center to right. And also though, we cannot
just to respect it.
Yeah, or at least to respect it.
And
but we can't off-put the people on the left by saying inflammatory things. Like, I don't care if you're a purple hair person from San Francisco who doesn't know what bathroom to use. You show up with a valid license and a good attitude, let's go, because now we've just brought you to the middle, or we may have brought you over to the right. But saying these inflammatory things that a lot of other publications do, or saying, oh, we're not doing this because the liberals do it, or that's just stupid, because at the end of the day, we're all Americans. 99% of us all want a good life. We may have different ways we're going to attack it, but we all have to understand each other. And guess what? The outdoors doesn't care if you're a Democrat or you're a Republican.
Well, I think you're touching on something there that I do think there is a commonality there that gets lost in that us versus them mentality, right? You're right. You go to outdoor retailer and there's a lot of granola there. And there's a lot of, so like I'm sitting in Ventura County right now, and Patagonia is a famous example of that because they started right here in my backyard. And I loved 90% of Yvon Chouinard's book. The first 90% where he talked about like his culture and his company and servicing a tribe that had never really had anyone making products for them before. All of that was great. It was the last 10% of the book where he got super political, where he lost me. And I'm like, okay, I'm out. But I have more in common with the guy in the Patagonia sweater vest who's a Sierra Club member and just loves mountain climbing in Yosemite than I do with some urban city dweller who hates going outside and spends all their time in an Oculus VR, like regardless of politics, right? Even though I prefer to spend my time hunting and fishing. So I guess there was a leading question, because my next question was to ask you, what's missing as somebody who's kind of, you guys are on the vanguard of outdoor media, you're figuring out all these new modalities. So what's missing in outdoor storytelling? What stories aren't being told? What viewpoints aren't being represented that you guys think need to happen?
Well, it's funny you said that about the Oculus. I just taking a quick step back to kind of laugh at myself. Back in the day when we were looking at the NFT market and blockchain, and people were going to build their mansions in the metaverse, I was like, well, we're going to have to furnish the metaverse. And I love taxidermy. So what if we created an Oculus modality where you were able to then use, like, say, like there's companies out there like the AccuBow where you actually, practice on your phone attached to a bow. But what if we attach this thing to a VR headset and that particular animal that you were to shoot had a particular blockchain code that you could only own? It could only be in your mansion on your wall in the metaverse. Like, that's what my brain's at. Like, how do you capture that guy? How do you get that guy into hunting and shooting? He may not get out in the wild, but he might be standing in his room with a VR headset on shooting blockchain deer. That didn't go anywhere. But outdoor storytelling, what's it missing? I think there's a lot of ego in outdoor storytelling. And I think what it's missing is neutrality. I think that, again, it goes back to that famous question so many people ask: why are numbers dwindling and hunting license dwindling?
I didn't know that. So that's the thing. So the numbers are going down.
It is going down. I don't know the particular numbers. I don't want to talk to that. And I don't want to make a statement and have it not be true. But I do know that the numbers are dwindling. And we continue to ask ourselves, what can we do? And I look at these organizations. You and I will one day be old white dudes, but these organizations keep talking to the same old white dude. And I'm like, what are guys? First off, 51% of the population, females, fastest growing demographic in the space. Talk to females. Second, Black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever race, talk to them. Find common ground, right? It's not woke. It's just called being human. Like, we want to be better humans. We want to improve the space. Find things that will hook them and bring them into the outdoors. How do we talk to them? And again, it's having multifaceted ways of doing content. I mean, even down to our Spotify channel. We have our artists create playlists, and those playlists span everything. It's like, you know what I found really interesting? Here's a group that I find very interesting and intriguing. And I don't know much about them. So if they're like way off the charts, forgive me. But there's a group called Compton Cowboys. They're a group of guys and gals out in Compton that save horses and use them for equestrian therapy. And I've watched documentaries on them, like riding their horses through Compton.
Interesting. Okay.
What that says to me is they're in the most un-outdoorsy kind of areas, the most probably un-old white dude kind of places. There is room for growth in people that are interested in that space, and they are just screaming for that outlet, and they want somebody to be able to connect with. And I think that if we do not look at that and do not realize how diverse of a country this is, we're going to keep talking to the same old white dude, and that's going to continue to dwindle numbers, and we're never going to get to where we want to be.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the media outlets that really tackle things like conservation, which you're speaking specifically to, just need to lower the barrier to entry. I think sometimes so many stories or content that's put out is just very technical. It's very over your head. And if you're just like right now, as a perfect example, with all the cuts that the government's making and people like Aranella speaking out about how he feels, like now is a really perfect time to double down on your conservation content to really help people understand what is being decided on. And how are you going to do that? You're going to double down on that content, but then how are you going to make more people understand it or interested in reading it? You've got to lower that barrier to entry. That's just my opinion on it, of what I think outdoor storytelling is missing. It's missing the mark on broadening the demographic. And the way that you broaden the demographic is just not dumbing it down, just being a little less technical, more diverse in what you're talking about to make people want to actually engage with it.
Well, that's a really good point. I didn't grow up in a family where hunting and fishing were something that we did. So when I started fly fishing, I was really uncomfortable. I felt like an idiot the first half dozen times I went out because I didn't know what gear to buy. I didn't know how to buy it. I didn't know how to approach a very technical thing, and I was embarrassed. And so I was fortunate enough that I was in a position where I could hire guides to go with me, and I would tell the guide, like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So it's going to be embarrassing for both of us. So apologies in advance. Just tell me what to do, and no one's around. Help me. And I was able to do that. But also, like, I didn't know, like, going into it, they're like, oh my God, do I need like $5,000 worth of gear just to go out the first time and try something I might hate? And I think a lot of people, especially dudes, are afraid of being embarrassed. And so it's like, I don't want to go embarrass myself, so I'm just not going to do it. And so I think you're right. That barrier to entry, it's not just a financial one. It's also like an ego thing too. Like, how do you get people out there to try something at low risk just to see, oh, you know what? Turns out it can be fun. And you can just try something.
Yeah. I mean, I started out hunting and fishing like 15 years ago, not fishing, but hunting. I didn't grow up with it either. My family didn't do it. My dad passed when I was 7. I didn't have a mentor in the space. I went out and shot my first deer by myself. And it was a disaster at first, right? Learning how to gut it using YouTube and things like that.
Yep, been there.
How are you going to start the Daytona 500 and lap 200? Not. And so you look at a lot of your predecessor, Peterson's doesn't run an article like how to skin a deer. They want to talk about like a booner that was shot in Saskatchewan, right? For me, that was one of the aha moments, but it wasn't like, how do I write like beginner content? Because that's going to put the novice. I don't want to become like the hunting for dummies. And that's another reason why the lifestyle stuff works so well, right? There's an entry point for no matter if you just want to like learn how to cook with a cast iron skillet, and then you find a great story about hunting and fishing, it may intrigue you into it. I grew up again without a dad, right? There's no ego here. My wife taught me how to drive a Standard. I smoked my first clutch within like a month of having it. And so I always grew up knowing that I had to bring down my ego because nobody's going to show me. I don't have a dad to do that. So I always cherish those professors that would say like, there's no such thing as a stupid question, because I asked a whole lot of them. I think that's something that I always keep in the back of my mind as I curate content for Hook and Barrel too. Like there is a 32-year-old or a 30-year-old John Radzwilla out there shooting his first deer for the first time because he read a cool story or maybe watched Meat Eater on Netflix or whatever. And he went out and did this, and he's too, I don't know, embarrassed, like you said, to ask somebody else how to do this. And he's going to destroy his iPhone just like I did. There's another me out there. I'm not the only one. And so that really is another heart behind it. And my first editorial piece I ever wrote in issue number 1, actually was part of the pitch for the entire magazine, was entitled, "My name is John Radzwilla, and I'm an endangered species." And it went on to talk about how we conserve everything from habitat to species, but we don't conserve the outdoorsman. And part of that is education of finding places for anybody at any level to plug in. Whether you're a veteran, you're going to find a story in Hook and Barrel. If you're a novice, you're going to find a story in Hook and Barrel.
That's cool. And I like your point about the lifestyle content, because you're right, it is more approachable than the super technical stuff. Well, guys, as we're wrapping this up, question I ask everyone on the show, if possible, I'd love to hear from both of you. As you think back on your careers and particularly at Hook and Barrel, what's the biggest mistake you made and what'd you learn from it?
Trust but verify. Trust but verify. In the beginning, we brought on a publisher that we trusted, but for 4 issues, we failed to verify. And as it turns out, he didn't know shit. He didn't, we came to him and said, "Hey, we've got this RFP. Can you help us out?" He didn't even know what an RFP was, which should have been a clear red flag. We trusted the numbers that he was presenting to us as the bills we had to pay. But as we found out, those numbers may or may not have been valid. We trusted his graphic designer. He's a great graphic designer. No, I've learned that you could probably find interns do stuff like that to that quality. Trust but verify. And guard your money very closely, because part of that trust at the end of the day, when you're an entrepreneur, it comes down to dollars and cents. You've got to literally verify everywhere that money is going to go, because it's very easy for people to prey on the green, on the weak, on the people just getting started. And they'll see you as an opportunity to go, "Oh yeah, they've got $100,000 to invest. We'll take 80 of that," and then give them 20,000 of value. And because people are out there for themselves. So my advice would be trust and verify everything.
Yeah, that's a good question. As John was talking, I was trying to think of what mine would be. I think for me, what I have had to learn is success is in the details. I think oftentimes people, of course you need that vision, you need the big picture, the gumption to go get it and go after it. But at the end of the day, when you're bootstrapping something or when you're just starting out, and this isn't just like a 1-month process, like your startup process is truly the first 5 years. So in your first 5 years, if you don't pay tremendous attention to the details of everything, yes, it's very tedious and time consuming, but if you don't do it, that's the quickest way to fail. And that's played true time and time again. I had to get really good. I was the one that had to get really good at the details of the business, having an eye for things that weren't fair, or if you're being stolen from, and an eye for the UPS charge that came in $500 more than what it should have been, or every little bit adds up. And to piggyback on what John was saying, it's like all that money adds up. It all matters, especially when you're trying to get to the next level. We had a goal that we weren't going to hire our first team member until we hit a certain revenue goal in the 7 figures. So when you're running a company and you're bringing in revenue to that level, but you're doing all of the work and okay, the healthiest point for me to make that first hire is this level, is this revenue goal, yeah, you're going to pay attention to all those details. So success is in the details.
And one final thing for entrepreneurs, like I said in the beginning, buckle up. Entrepreneur is synonymous with roller coaster. There's going to be ups and downs, and you better be ready for every bit of them. But if you got the intestinal fortitude to deal with it, it's incredibly freeing. I can go to the gym at 1:30 in the afternoon and spend an extra half hour there and not have to worry about a boss telling me what I got to do. It's amazing. But at the same time, I wake up in the morning how I'm going to make payroll and feed our employees' families. So there's a lot that comes along with it, but just be ready. And it's a really fun adventure, but it's a rough road, but it's a really rewarding road.
Well said. Well, Natalie, John, I've really enjoyed this conversation. As we wrap up, what's the best place for people to find Hook and Barrel and keep up with what you're doing?
Hookandbarrel.com. So HOOKANDBARREL.com. Follow us on the usual typical socials, Hook and Barrel Mag on Insta, Hook and Barrel Magazine on Facebook. We're on Twitter too, Hook Barrel Mag. YouTube, we're on YouTube. We have our own channel. Check out our videos there. And most importantly, go to Hook and Barrel, go to .com, go to the subscribe tab, and you could either sign up to be a VIP and get our newsletter, or you can sign up for our digital subscription, or sign up for print, $39.99. I always joke, $40 is a lot cheaper than going to Bass Pro Shops because you walk out of there $100 lighter.
This is true. Well, very good. I've enjoyed it, and I appreciate both of your time very much. So again, to those listening at home, if you're into fishing, hunting, the outdoor lifestyle, I definitely recommend checking out Hook and Barrel. That is a wrap on today's episode of Only the Strong Survive. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review, and you can also follow us on YouTube. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Dan.